Hello, everybody. So the teaching activity that I created was one that is based off of some things that I've experienced, and then some things that I've also done as a TA for recitation SOS 110. So basically, this activity is kind of a blend of sort of uh, getting into a relationship with plants on a deeper level, and also mindful eating, and also like the experience of going to a place where food is grown. So this activity would be specifically about sustainable consumption as it relates to food. And so what would happen ideally would be like a field trip to a local garden, or um, like a local farm, someone that's practicing agriculture that's done in a very ecologically sound way. Um, and so the students would go there, get a tour from the whoever is coordinating it, someone that's familiar with the place, kind of describe it and get them, acquainted with the space. And then I would ask them to, in the garden area, to find a place with a plant that's away from others, so they need to be separated, and silently kind of sit for 2 minutes and sort of just observe this plant. They could have their eyes closed and be like touching and smelling, maybe even tasting, listening to maybe what the plant tells them, or they could do it more visually as well. And then after 2 minutes, they would write a little letter to the plant. And it could be anything that they feel compelled to write about. So it could be like expressions of gratitude. It could be something about maybe like taking the perspective of the plant, talking to them. It could just be really open. So they write this letter, then they would read it aloud to the plant, and then they would be encouraged to tear that letter up into little pieces and put it in the compost bin. And sort of the purpose of that is like we're putting these, whatever it was that we told the plant or the plant told us, into the compost bin to decompose and recompose, and then be taken up by the plants and be potentially eaten by us or another person again. So sort of the interconnectedness. And then we would have like a lunch or a dinner, I guess, depending on what time this class was at, where we would actually help harvest and prepare and cook food. And then before we sat down, or as we sat down to eat it, we would get our food and have it like sitting in front of us. We would do a short guided meditation, to have them envision sort of their normal food, their normal day to day, and then think about, have them imagine sort of how that food normally that they consume gets to them. So where does that food come from normally? What environment is that food grown in or birthed in, if it's an animal? And when they imagine that environment, do they imagine this plant or this animal happy? And then imagine the people that help grow this plant or animal, do they imagine them happy? And just kind of keep that process going down from production to harvest to processing, distribution, and just kind of keep thinking about the energy going into the plant, whether the plant is happy or the people, the workers, are they happy? Just kind of envisioning that. And then we would take like a 30-second sort of breather to just kind of let that go. And then we could open our eyes and kind of take that same journey with the food that's right in front of us. So we could think about, where that food, the journey that food took to get to us, and then kind of maybe think about how the journeys might be different and what that means for them, if there's any sort of meaning that they find in that, any emotions that may come up, and just kind of be aware of it. Not necessarily judging right and wrong, but just being aware of, how they feel with these different types of food. I'm assuming that the food that they consume normally is not, coming from a local place and probably goes, grown by industrial agriculture and goes through a pretty nasty process to get to them. But that could be wrong. Some of these students may already be eating, very cleanly or whatever. So, but anyway, then I would also, as we got done with the meal, I would remind people to sort of consider how their body feels after eating something like this versus whatever their day-to-day is, right? So is there any difference in the body, and if so, what does that mean for you? What do those emotions mean? What do those feelings mean? And that would be essentially the end. I was thinking, as far as an evaluation, what I usually do with students is we just have a discussion about it. Just sit in a circle, and we could potentially do what's called the CRP process. I didn't think about this before when I wrote it, but the CRP process, the critical response process, is really good for feedback. It's often used in dance and theater, but it can apply to literally any setting. It was developed by Liz Lerman, who's a professor at ASU, amazing individual. So that actually would make a lot of sense to do the critical response process for this, to get the process is basically 4 stages. And the first one, students would just say something they found meaningful in the activity. The second one, I would ask them specific questions about their experiences with it. The third one, they would ask me certain questions, whatever comes to their mind. And then the fourth one, they would give me critical feedback. So whether that be things they didn't like, things that they felt I did poorly, or that I could do better, anything like that. So that would actually be a pretty cool way to do the evaluation. So yeah, that's my creative activity.